All right, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Conversations During Times of Transformation and Change. My name is Lindsay Watkins, and I'll be your producer for today's session. Before we get started, there's just a few housekeeping items that I would like to go over. Please close all other programs currently running on your desktop. We will be interacting in a variety of ways today. We'll be using chats and status icons. At the top left of your screen, you'll see a figure with their hand raised. The arrow to the right displays all of the options you see here on the screen. So if all of you can find that figure with their hand raised, give me a green check to let me know that you are ready to participate in today's webinar. Wonderful. I see tons of green checks coming in. Thank you. All lines will be muted. However, you can press *6 or #6 to mute or unmute your own individual lines. And I'm here as producer in case anything happens. So if you have any technical difficulties or any problems with audio, send me a message in the chat pod, and I'll resolve your issue as soon as I can. And now I'd like to turn it over to your facilitator for today, Beverly Kroll.
Thank you, Lindsay. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever today may find you. Welcome to our webinar today, Conversations During Time of Transformation and Change. Well, for many of you, I think you're probably like we, even ourselves at Career Systems International, are experiencing a time where we're undergoing changes in how we work, where we work, even why we work in some cases. And during all of that change and during times of transformation, we find that employees, more than ever, are really asking good questions around what does that mean, what does the change mean for the organization, and ultimately, what does it mean for myself? So today we thought it would be a really great idea to spend some time sharing with you some strategies that really help leaders during this time of transformation and change to help keep their employees engaged during the process, to make sure that they're not only keeping them so that they quit and stay, stay, but not quit and leave as well. So today we're going to give you some key strategies, some tips and tricks, if you will, and then also give you some great conversation starters. Because at the center of all of this, and during time of transformation and change, sometimes we may have a tendency to want to kind of play it close to the vest. But this is a time when we, as leaders and as employees, really need to be having more and more conversations about what's happening in our world of work and how that might be impacting us. So I thought it'd be a great way to start the conversation by doing a little bit of talking. And I'd like to ask all of you this question, and go ahead and type it into the chat box that you see there on the left-hand side of the screen. What's changing in your world of work? So as you saw the title of today's webinar, something stood out for you. I'm suspecting that there's a lot of things happening in your world of work that's changing, and sometimes I feel like there's comfort in knowing that others may be going through some of the same things you are. So in that chat box, begin to type in what are some of those changes that are happening in your world of work. I see some of you are typing in great. So you're being acquired, your CEO is leaving, and you have new people taking the reign. Another president is leaving, reorganization, new leadership, technology. Technology is always changing, isn't it? You have a new division leader, shifting from performance ratings, being acquired, your workspace. You have senior leaders leaving, 2 key openings. You're reorganizing again, technology, your methodology is changing, new city council members, culture change, technology change, job task, expectations. So there's a lot happening out there in the world of work. And I see that, Carla, you have your hand raised. If you have a question, you can go ahead and unmute your line, I believe, Lindsay, with the *6. And if you didn't have a question, that was just an accident, feel free to also, you can just type that into the chat box as well. So I see that a lot of us are going through a lot of different things. Carla, I love your shiny new pennies. Look, let's try that. You know, in my experience prior to joining Career Systems International, I worked for NASA's Space Shuttle program for 16 years supporting space shuttle processing. And one of the things that I used to hear managers say quite often is, this is just the initiative of the day, and if I lay low long enough, this too shall pass. I see, Carla, thanks for the oops. So there's a lot happening in our world of work. There's a lot of changes taking place, and with those changes, people get a little unsettled. So we wanted to give you some strategies to kind of help with that environment inside the organization and perhaps equip your leaders specifically with some words of wisdom, if you will, some strategies, some good questions so that they feel a little bit more comfortable, more competent and confident in having the types of conversations employees still want to have and, in fact, want to have more often of during these times of transformation and change. So, Lindsay, let's go ahead and close out that chat box. So, I love this question, change. It's a word we use all the time. What is it? Ultimately, what is change? Well, there's some great sayings out there around change. One of the ones that I love the most is there is nothing permanent except change. And not too long ago, I had the opportunity to see our CEO, our founder, Beverly Kay, and she's the author of several books that many of you probably are aware of, was speaking to a group of people, and she said, you know what, change is old news. Get over it already. And in fact, I think she's right. There is nothing permanent except change. Change really is old news. So for those of us who are dragging our feet and saying, no, 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 not me, not change, I think we find in today's work environment that we all have to be a little bit more resilient and be more agile in responding to the change that's taking place. And because of that, we as organizations need to be more resilient and agile as well. If we're not, we certainly are running a risk. And here's some risk factors that we may want to consider. And chances are these are things you already know. And if you didn't know them, you wouldn't have dialed into today's conversation. So we know that in times of uncertainty, the risk for losing top talent, physically or psychologically, is especially high. So when people don't know what's happening, if they can't see their future in your future, if they're questioning their place and where the organization is heading, the risk for losing them is especially high. So we need to make sure we're having those conversations, sharing with them what's going on in the world of work. There's some great data out there that says 9 out of 10 of the key barriers to the success of any change programs are likely people-related. So it could be that people are resisting any type of change going on, and oftentimes the change resistance comes from a place of just not really knowing about the change or understanding the change. Only 24% of private sector and 15% of public sector employees believe change is well managed in their organization. So go ahead and right now go up to the top where that person's hand is raised and click the green check marks, agree, if you believe change is well managed in your organization, and put the X, the red box, if you believe change is not well managed in your organization. So hit the agree button if you believe, yes, change is well managed in my organization. Hit the red button with the X, disagree if you think it's not. I'm always curious to see what people are saying. Well, there's a couple of you in there who are saying, yeah, change is well managed, but for the most part, overwhelmingly, I'm seeing that change is not necessarily very well managed inside your organization. Another interesting stat that says only 51% of staff felt like they were involved or consulted on decisions that might actually impact them, their area, their department. And then lastly, only 40% of today's workforce really know about their corporation's goals, strategies, and tactics. So there's really a lot going on in the world of work. And that's okay, Evelyn, thank you. There's really a lot going on in the world of work. And for us as individuals, we need to begin to really understand, where are we doing well inside our organization, and where are there opportunities for us to get a little bit better? So what I thought I'd like to do now is go ahead and open up a quick polling question. And of those 5 statements that we just shared with you, which one, select the one that really resonates most with you related to how your organization is or is not currently managing transformation and change inside your company. So which one of those do you think your organization is or is not really doing well? So select the one that's really standing out for you right now. We have 88 of you on the line today, which is fabulous, so we'll give everybody a chance to cast their vote, if you will, before I go ahead and share the results. I see that people are still going ahead and voting, so we'll give it just another few seconds. All right, Lindsay, it looks like we've kind of reached the end. Go ahead and share the results with everybody if you would. And what I'm seeing is that for the most part, the statement that's really resonating with people is in times of uncertainty, the risk for losing top talent is high, and followed closely behind that is key barriers to change are people-related. So what we're really recognizing and what all of you seem to understand is that inside your organizations, people are critical to the success around any changes that you're making or any type of transformation that you're undergoing. But people and managing of those relationships sometimes seems to be the thing that has a tendency to get forgotten or put off to the side. Instead, we're busy with project plans. We're busy trying to map out the change without really thinking about the people component and how we can help managers and employees really kind of navigate that change and transformation. So Lindsay, let's close that poll question, and let's think about this a little bit and kind of share with you a statement that I think really resonates with the conversation today. Engagement and involvement are critical in managing change and transformation at work. So what it really boils down to is, do your employees and do your leaders feel involved as part of the process? And the truth is, many of them probably don't. And unfortunately, we sometimes overcomplicate what really can be a very simple, easy process to follow. Because ultimately, it boils down to this. And I think so many of us will say, well, you know what, Beverly, that's kind of common sense. Are you talking about what really matters in the workplace? Are your leaders and are your employees really talking about what matters? And the truth of the matter is, managers don't need a crystal ball. They don't need that magic 8-ball, neither do employees, because employees want to know about some very specific things. So what do employees want to know about? Well, they really want to know about the strategic direction and goals of their organization. They want to understand, where are we going and how are we going to get there? They also want to understand what's changing in my profession, what's changing in my industry, what's changing in the organization as we're moving forward. What does the future look like, and what might possibly be my role in that future? Employees also want to understand and know about what are the new developments, the emerging trends in our marketplace. I saw many of you type in changes in your world of work around technology. So how is the technology changing, and how might that impact me and what I'm doing moving forward? And they also want to understand some of the cultural and political realities of their world of work and how it impacts them. You know, how might these things, these factors that are changing, how might the culture really be changing, and what do I need to know about the shifting realities so that I can better equip myself to be prepared for them, but also to be a part of those changes that are happening. So one more polling question for you. Interested to see, of these 4 areas, where do you think your organization is really playing it too close to the vest? Meaning, where do you think they're not doing a good enough job in sharing information with your employees across the organization? So where do you think you as an organization are a little bit weak in sharing information with the entire company around what's changing in the world of work in these 4 areas? We'll give all of you a chance to vote. And I know that we have people calling in from all over the globe, so that's wonderful. I saw that we had some folks on the line from Brazil. Welcome. I don't know what other countries we have, but for all of you who've joined in today, we really appreciate you making the time for us. So we'll give you all another chance to go ahead and type in, of these 4 areas, where does your organization play it too close to the vest? Where are you holding back too much information as an organization around these things that employees really want to know about? All right, Lindsay, let's go ahead and broadcast those results. And for the most part, it's really around the company and the organization's strategic direction and goals, followed closely behind kind of the cultural and political realities of your organization. The good news is that it doesn't really have to be that way. Ultimately, there's some things that we can do as leaders. There's things employees can do as well to really get in the loop around the organization's strategic direction and goals and the cultural and political realities inside your organization. All right, thank you, Lindsay. Let's shut that poll down. Ultimately, the truth is this. This is one of those things that I think many of us will believe is employees really want to have the scoop and not be out of the loop. So are your employees, or do you as an employee, do you have the scoop of all of those things that we just talked about, or are you finding that you or your employees are out of the loop? And here's a simple truth, another simple truth, and I think many of you might agree with this. In the absence of information, what do? We make stuff up. So in the absence of information, they'll make information up, they'll make stuff up, and typically what we tend to do when we're trying to fill in the missing gaps of information is what we determine to be true is so far away from what really is, and sometimes it's far worse than what's actually happening. So here's what I'd love to do now is in the chat box, type in what is the craziest or the most off-the-wall company rumor that you've ever heard that ended up not being true, or a statement that you heard inside your organization that ended up not being true. I'll tell you, when I was working previously in the space industry, we were in the process of downsizing because we were getting to a space of shuttle fly out, and we had a department meeting, and one of the things we did in the department meeting is created a folder for every person. And we put that folder on a table for everyone to pick up when they came in, and the first thing people started to try and figure out was, because my folder is on top, does that mean I'm first to go? Which really wasn't the truth. What it was is we just put the folders on a table. There was no rhyme or reason to it, but it was a good example about how in the absence of information, people start to make stuff up. So I see you've got some leader is leaving. You're selling off your most profitable divisions, or rumors about various leaders heading out, or a hostile takeover. Yeah, so what we know is if we're not sharing information with employees, and if they're not getting information on the company's strategic direction and goals, if they're not paying attention to the cultural and political realities inside your organization, or what's happening within the future, or emerging trends, what we start to hear and see is that, oh, layoff is coming for 40 employees, or there's a hostile takeover, and all of that information certainly does lead to a higher disengaged workforce, which can create an environment where you're starting to see your top talent walk out the door. So unfortunately, though, there's a little bit of fear. There's some fear factor about having conversations around some of those tough things, because it could be true there's a reorganization. You may be being acquired. We heard about those stories early on and what's changing in your world of work. We also saw that you have leaders leaving. And in the mid of all those changes, what happens is managers sometimes think, you know what, it's too early to tell them. Or perhaps the news is too frightening, we better wait. I'm going to hold back a little bit. Or maybe they even say, I'm afraid if we tell them, productivity will drop or they'll leave. Well, as managers are thinking that and not sharing information, employees begin to believe silence must mean it's pretty bad. Or, oh no, they're moving the company to Panama, or the company is going belly up. Where else can I get a job? So again, in the absence of information, employees are going to begin to make things up, and it's typically far worse than what the truth is. Bottom line, when it comes to transformation and change inside the organization, it really is a two-way street. And that two-way street meets in one location, and it's in conversations. So it's important for managers and for employees to be making time for conversations, more so now during times of transformation and change than any other time in the world of work. And these conversations need to be focused on engaging and retaining your workforce, continuing to develop yourself and to develop your employees despite not knowing exactly where the future is heading, and then finally challenging yourself and challenging your employees to stay on top of what's changing in the world of work, to stay on top of how those changes may in fact be impacting you, and what are the things you need to do to become better equipped and ready for the changes as they occur. Ultimately, we know this. We know at Career Systems International that employee engagement is truly cultivated one conversation at a time over time. So as employees and as leaders and as managers, are we doing enough? Are we having those types of conversations that truly are vitally important to the success of our business, but also are we having the conversations that will keep our employees engaged during times of transformation and change? So in the chat box, what I'd like for you to do is real quickly type in how well do you think you're doing at conversations during times of transformation and change? So giving your company a grade of A for excellent to F for failing. So give your company a grade. How well do you think you're doing right now at these types of conversations in your organizations? Giving yourself a grade of an A is excellent, outstanding work, to an F is failing. Pretty good. So I see some B pluses. That's great. I see some Bs. I see some Cs, which means there's opportunities for some improvement. Sue, you're giving your company a great A minus. Joyce, I love your comment. It depends on the leader, right? So some leaders are excellent at this. Others, in fact, may not be doing quite as well. We have some organizations out there that are solid averages, and then there's those that have opportunities to improve. Well, unless you're an A+, and unless you have all your leaders who are A+, there are absolutely things that leaders can be doing, strategies that they can employ and use to keep their employees engaged during times of transformation and change. So we wanted to share a couple of those strategies with you right now. And these are strategies that work for managers. No matter where your leader is, no matter where they sit in the top level of leadership down to frontline supervisors, these are things and strategies that managers can begin doing now, today, to help engage, retain, develop, and challenge their employees during times of transformation and change. The first one seems so simple, but it's one that we have a tendency to forget, which is if you have information, share it. Don't hold that back. Be willing to have conversations and share information. Be sure as managers to talk about the organization's business strategies and the vision. Ask your leaders, are you talking with your managers about, are you talking with your employees about where the company is heading, why they're heading there, the vision for the future? Maybe you even need to begin in asking your own managers, do you know where the organization's business strategy is? Do you understand the organization and the business vision? If managers don't know, then certainly it's going to be more challenging for them to engage employees in these types of conversations. So it could be the place you have to start is with your leaders themselves, with your managers. Make sure that they're in sync and understand more about the business strategy and the vision of the organization. Managers should also really be spending time asking their employees what kind of information they want, when they want it, and how they want to get it. You know, one thing we know about engagement is that it's truly personal and it's very individual. So as leaders, are we talking to our employees and asking them, you know, what is it that you want to know? How often do you want to know it? When do you want to know it, and how is it how would you like to receive the information? And then lastly, around information, it's really important for managers to be willing to share critical information with their employees to help their employees make informed decisions about their career development during times of transformation and change. Sometimes we find inside organizations, managers have far more information than employees do about the future direction of the company, how changes might be impacting their individual employee careers, growth, and development. And the tendency might be to hold back on development during these times because we don't know exactly what's coming. But this is really a great time for employees to begin to build some muscle in some key areas where, in fact, they may be a little weak, and it's an opportunity to start doing some skill building. And there's ways to do that without having to send them to a training class. I'm sure everybody on this call has heard the 70-20-10 rule. and we understand what it means to develop folks. It's not just in a training class or by reading a book. Certainly we can develop people by giving them opportunities to do things that will build a new skill. Yeah. So thanks, Raymond. Yeah, there are limits and there are protocols, but in general you agree. Thank you. And I think one of the things that will kind of follow on to your statement, Raymond, is the second strategy for managers to consider, which is truth. And as much as we can as leaders inside an organization, we need to do this. We need to tell them the truth about the organization, including its challenges and downturns. And if for some reason you as a manager have limits on what you can or cannot share with your employees, be sure to say that there's things I can and cannot share, but explain why. Share what you can, explain what you can, tell the truth about the organization, including its challenges and its downturns. And if, in fact, there's something you can't do, if there's information that you can't give, be willing to share with employees the how and the why of that. Secondly, around truth, when you have challenging news, tough information, give it face-to-face and be sure to give it as soon as possible. One thing I've learned is it doesn't take long for the rumor mill to get full into effect and for people to begin to start making up the information in the absence of information. So as soon as you have information and you've been given the opportunity and the go-ahead to provide it, do it as quickly as you can and give it face-to-face if at all possible. Now, I know many of you are just like myself, and you're working in a virtual world, so that face-to-face may not always be possible. But there's lots of things you can do. You can use technology, have a Skype call. You can also find opportunities to have conversations with employees on the phone, but make sure you're passing along that information as quick as you can. And then finally, when we're in the process of telling the truth and information is changing quickly and sometimes it changes faster than we can get it out, if you make a mistake, confess, tell the truth, take responsibility, and apologize if any information has been shared that isn't necessarily in alignment with new information that may be coming out. Because sometimes in our spirit of trying to communicate as much as we can, as quick as we can, it's possible that we could get ahead of ourselves. But these are key strategies that will work for managers no matter what type of transformation or change you're undergoing, whether it's a big change, a small change. These are key strategies for managers to keep in mind. Employees want to know what's happening, and they want to know the truth of what's happening inside their world of work. And as organizations, if we're not equipping our managers to be able to do that, we as senior leaders inside companies or HR business partners, talent leaders, or executives certainly need to be working twice as hard to make sure our managers have the information and the skills and the ability to pass this type of the information and truth on to their employees. So what I'd like to know is how does this work inside your own organization? So we have two chat boxes up, one for information at the top and the bottom one is truth. Of these two strategies, what do you think is the most critical for you or for your organization to start doing today and why? So if you think information is most critical for you, go ahead and type in that top chat box, that's the tongue twister, why it's important for you to start sharing information a little bit more. And if truth is the one that really resonates with you, type in the bottom chat box why truth is something that your organization needs to begin doing and doing a little bit more of. I'll give everybody a chance to respond. Yeah, thanks, Deborah. So really beginning to get more information from your top talent. Ask them what they want. Good. Thanks. Not necessarily sharing timely information, talking about the business strategy. Yeah, you're right, Elisa. To help people not be quite so anxious. Love, Joyce, that you're saying you need to engage your top talent on more information on what they need. Coupling it with career development, absolutely. Asking your talented people. Susan, love that major new ventures need to be introduced prior to simply implementing. Yeah, we're famous for that, right? So we get really excited about something. We go immediately to execute and implement, and sometimes we forget to communicate to people what those changes are. So love that. And I love Sue. Sometimes we spend too much time deciding on what to say. We may realize or think we've already said it, or we choose not to say it altogether because we're so concerned about what to say. So down around truth, we do need to build on and encourage employees' trust. So the more truth-telling we do, the higher the trust factor is. And we need to make sure that we're sharing the right information and get it to all team members. You're right, Anastasia. And making sure that the message is consistent as well. So are we sharing consistent messaging in all of our conversations that we're having? And sometimes that means for us internally that we have to do a better job of drafting what that message may look like, so that as manager 1 shares one message, manager 2 is sharing the same message across the hall, if you will. Love that you say, Karen, when in doubt, tell the truth, share what you can, and if you can't, explain why. People understand. Organizations, sometimes we have to catch up a little bit in order to be able to share all of the truth of what the changes may be inside the organization. And I love Gail, yeah, when rumors are rampant external to the organization, they need to be addressed internally. Great point. Today's social media environment, there's more and more places and spaces and ways for employees to share the information. It used to be the water cooler at the workplace, or it was meeting during lunch and chatting, but today that's not the only way information is spread. It's spread much faster through the possibilities and the use of technology, so we need to really manage it more and more during these times of change. Great. I see Charlene is typing real quickly, so I'll make sure I give her a chance to respond. So ultimately, these are great strategies, pretty basic stuff. I love to say this is common sense stuff and commonly practiced. These are things we know we as managers and leaders need to do inside the organization, but sometimes we get uncomfortable ourselves with the changes that are occurring, or sometimes we get a little too busy and have a tendency to let these critical strategies fall to the wayside and only rely upon them sometimes when it's too late. Yeah, and I love your comment, Charlene, is combining the strategy and the vision and connecting it to what's in it for me as an employee, specifically around my career development. That's great. So let's go ahead and close out those boxes, Lindsay. And one thing I want to make sure all of you understand, and don't walk away from this conversation with the idea that this is solely the responsibility of the organization, or it's solely the responsibility of the manager. One thing we know and we believe at Career Systems is that career development, employee engagement, and retention ultimately is a partnership. And that partnership requires an organization to provide the systems, the tools, the resources, the processes, the information. It requires managers to support, coach, inform, engage their employees. But as critical of a component to the partnership is the employee. Employees have skin in the game, if you will, as well. Employees need to have a role and a responsibility during this time of transformation and change. And we find that sometimes that's a message that doesn't always get funneled down to employees. Because if you want to know what's going on in your organization, what should you do? Let's see what everybody types in the chat box. If you as an employee want to know what's happening inside your organization, what can you do? One-word answer. Let's see what everybody types in that chat box. Yeah. Oh, my gosh. It's so simple, right? Thank you. It's ask. If you want to know what's happening, you simply need to ask. And I even would suggest that there's a couple of strategies for employees as well. So what are those strategies that work for employees? Well, asking is one. And if you want to know what's going on, all you have to do is ask and be willing to be open to the changes you mentioned, talk with someone, understand. I would also suggest that as employees, if you want to not be out of the loop and get the scoop, it's important for you to plug yourself in, to pay attention and get the information that you need. And there's ways employees can do this. Employees specifically during times of transformation and change should focus on building their network, connecting to various people inside the organization. Just like you mentioned, Rosanna, talk with a colleague. Find out, build your network, expand who is in your career network, talk to people across the organization, plug yourself in to all of the different channels that are going on inside the company so that you can learn more about the changes that are taking place and ultimately how it might impact you and your career as an employee. I'd also say as employees, we need to beware of the rumor mill. And as employees, we need to make sure we're not contributing to the rumor mill. So beware of what's out there. Listen to what's going on. Pay attention to what's going on. But also when you're hearing information that really causes you concern or something that you question, go ask people. Is this information accurate? Is this something that I need to be aware of? And of course, don't spread the rumor if we learn quickly on that it's not in fact true. I like the idea of being a detective as an employee and asking questions about what it is you need to know or what it is that you want to know. I have been a manager for many, many years and have led several different organizations, and I've often said to myself and sometimes to my employees, I don't have a crystal ball. I really don't have a crystal ball. It wasn't checked out to me the day I got my manager hat, my leader hat. So I don't know everything, and I certainly am not a mind reader. So if you have questions, come talk to me. Let me know what it is you want to know. I'll share information as I have it, but be willing to ask questions. And if I'm not telling you what you need to know, ask. So be a detective as an employee. Ask questions about what it is that you want to know and need to know. And then as employees as well, it's important that we're willing to share information with others. So as you're learning things about the strategic direction of the company, the vision, any new realities that you're bumping up against, are you passing on the information to others in a way that will help them plug themselves in as well? I might even suggest, are you challenging your peers and colleagues as you hear them talking about how they don't know what's going on? Are you challenging them to plug themselves in too? And then secondly, another strategy that really works for employees is truth. Truth hurts, or does it? Sometimes we don't always want to know. I know early on I had a great boss who loved to give me feedback, so much so, and usually the feedback was wonderful feedback. It was very constructive feedback, but she was committed to giving me feedback on a regular basis. One day I looked at her and I said, you know what, boss? Feedback is a gift, but not every day is my birthday. And she just looked at me and couldn't quite understand why I said that. And I said, the truth sometimes hurts. Let me work and build upon one truth at a time. And when it comes to times of transformation and change, as employees, we need to be willing to accept what's the realities of my work, what are the realities of the organization, and ultimately, what are the realities that might impact my career. So be willing to seek out information and ask for the real scoop. Begin to understand what really are the changes that are taking place and how might those changes, in fact, ask. How will I fit into the changes that are coming? Or how might I not fit into the changes? Be willing and bold enough to ask the question, knowing the changes that are coming, is there something I need to begin doing differently? Is there a skill I need to begin developing to help me be prepared and be successful amid the changes and transformation? Ask people and ask others what you need to do to prepare. Get honest feedback from others and be willing to ask for feedback more than once. And you'll do that by building your network, by plugging yourself into the organization's information network, if you will, by talking to multiple people, beginning to understand really what are the opportunities for your personal growth and development that will help you be better equipped for the changes.
Thank you for calling Needham Electric Supply.
Oh, there you go. So, Lindsay, I think you hear audio that somebody may not have muted their lines. Okay. I think we fixed it. Thank you, Lindsay. So information, plug yourself in as an employee and be willing to seek out the truth not only about what's changing in your world of work, but also how those changes might impact you and what you need to do as an individual to prepare. So here's our second opportunity to kind of think through these strategies, we're going to bring up two chat boxes again. And we'll clear the top one and the bottom one, Lindsay. Thank you. And in the top one of those strategies for yourself, type in the one that you're committed to do for you. You've all identified that you're undergoing changes in the world of work. So in the top chat box, type in the strategy that you are committed to do for yourself in information. And in the bottom one, type in the strategy that you are committed to do for yourself as well around truth. So not only are we going to talk about helping our managers out, but for ourselves as individuals, being self-powered careerists, taking ownership of our own engagement and satisfaction. What are some things you can do for yourself? Yeah, great. So I see at the top several of you are willing to be a detective. Many of you are going to build your network. Deborah. Marianne's going to ask questions. Great. Alicia, network. Lisa's going to network and research. Excellent. Excellent. And down around truth is begin to ask questions, like Amy said, of what do I need to do to prepare? You know, that's a great question. If we know these changes are happening, seek out our leader or somebody within our network and say, I know that the changes are coming. I see the transformation happening. What do I need to do to become better prepared to manage the technology shift? With the changing roles in leadership that we have, are there specific things I need to know, specific things I need to do in order to make sure that I'm a part of the future of the organization and I won't be left behind? Great questions, great things to do for yourself. So I hope all of you will jot a note down somewhere, really commit to doing this, give yourself a deadline, and follow up with a peer or a colleague, have a conversation with someone else, really hold each other accountable to not only helping your leaders, but helping yourself manage during these times of transformation and change. You know, many of you, as part of your responses around information or truth, identified that perhaps I need to go seek information out, I need to ask, and that could be done and most likely will be done as part of a conversation. You know, in conversations, we use that word, we toss it around quite a bit, and it's important that all of us are willing to have conversations. But how do we have the conversation, and what do we really talk about? So we wanted to take some of the mystery out of that conversation with you and for you and give you some good conversation kickstarter questions that can get you started, whether you're a leader or whether you're a manager or an employee inside the organization. What are some great questions you can begin to ask yourself and ask others to really jumpstart the conversation around the transformation and changes taking place in your workplace? So let's go ahead and close out those two chat boxes, Lindsay. So what might be some good questions to ask of yourself, to ask of your employees? Well, we'll give you a few. Here's a quick one. Given the changes taking place in the organization, if you're a manager, ask the question, where do you think you have the most viable opportunities? Or as an individual, where do I have the most viable opportunities? So really begin to ask the question in a conversation and understand where might each individual employee fit, or where might I as an employee begin to seek to grow and develop myself? Another great question is, what are some key issues or concerns driving the organizational goals? How can I or how can you play a role? So talk about what's happening, what are some issues, concerns that are occurring organizationally, and how might each individual play a role in those opportunities that will certainly come from any issues or concerns arising. Be willing to ask a very simple question. You know, how is our workplace changing? And how are those changes impacting you? You know, the world of work is changing, even if you're not going through a significant change initiative inside your company. By simple right of having technology, everyone is experiencing some type of change every day because technology changes so quickly. No sooner do I learn how to use one Microsoft Office product than a new update comes and I have to learn how to use another one. So as professionals, no matter where we work, no matter what we're doing, technology itself is one of those things that requires us to constantly adapt and change and to be resilient amid those changes, because it is changing sometimes faster than we can even keep up with. What questions do you have about the changes that we're undergoing in our organization? So as a manager, don't wait for your employees to come to you. Sit down, have a conversation with them, and simply ask, what questions do you have? And then be willing to listen, really listen to understand. And one of the tricks that we share quite often in our workshop is double-click on some of those keywords or phrases. Take the conversation deeper. Ask follow-on questions to really get to what's really driving your employees' responses. And another conversation kickstarter question is, we're in the midst of a lot of changes. What kind of information do you need from me, and what is the best way to pass it along? You know, every employee has their own ability to cope with a certain amount of information, and employees want to know different things. Some want to know as it's just happening. Others want to be kind of kept in the loop on the front end. We know employee engagement happens in a very individual way. It happens in every interaction with our employees. And I often tell managers, you're engaging your employees or not every time you interact with them. So if you want to make the most of those interactions, find out what truly engages your employees. And one of the ways to do that during times of transformation and change is to ask a very simple question. What do you want to know? How do you want to learn about it? And how often do you want to know it? It's a great way to make sure you're getting the information to your employees in the way that is most engaging and satisfying to them. Now, those are 5 questions that we've come up with. Be curious to see from this wonderful group of 85 folks who I know are subject matter experts in their own right, who are experienced professionals, what questions might you ask? So in the chat box, do you have a question that as a manager you might ask of your employees? Or do you have a question as an employee you may ask of your managers? So share with everybody else on the call in that chat box, what are some great questions that you might ask or share with others to really keep these conversations during times of transformation and change going? Good. So I see several of you. So what are your concerns? How are you feeling about the changes that are happening? Great question, Charlene. So not only what are the changes, but how are you feeling about it? Love your question, Stephen, around with all of these changes, what skills do you need to enhance? Yeah, what support do you need from me? Brian, yeah, after you've shared information, based on what we've shared, what do you think is happening? So give your employees an opportunity to recite back the changes that they've heard about. How can I help you adjust to the change? Love your question, Philip. How does my work impact organizational goals? And Anthony, what are you hearing on the streets? You know, if you want to get in touch with that rumor mill, ask questions. What are you hearing? And then as a leader, you have the opportunity to address some of those things and share the truth of what's really happening inside the organization. You know, wanting to know, should I be concerned? What's working for you and what's not? How can we work to help you adapt? All of these are great questions, and they're all questions really designed to tap into where employees are during the time of change and transformation. How are they preparing themselves? And also, how are they feeling? How are they adapting to all of those changes that are occurring? So what I'm interested in now is we're going to open up 5 chat boxes. And assuming your manager wants to ask you one of these questions, how might you respond? So we're going to do a little mini stay interview with you all virtually, if you will. So you've got those 5 questions in front of you, the Kickstarter questions. So given the fact that I'm your manager today and I were to ask you one of those 5 questions, how might you respond today? So type in your answer in one of those 5 boxes that you see in front of you. So if you are interested in responding to the question, you know, what are some of the key issues or concerns driving organizational roles? How can you play a role? If I was your manager and I asked you that question, how would you respond? So look through those 5 questions and then type in how you might respond to any one of those questions given your manager asking you that question today. I know one of the questions that resonates with me the most is, what questions do you have about the changes we are undergoing in our organization? You know, even being a leader sometimes in an organization doesn't mean I have all of the insight into what's happening. So I have questions about what are some of the changes that we're undergoing inside our company. So I see many of you are typing a couple of answers. Great. Oh, Anastasia, yeah, I love that. Why are we doing this, and how will it make us better? So begin to understand, not only are we experiencing these changes, but why are we undergoing these changes, and how is it ultimately going to help improve us and grow us as a business? Great, thank you. See, a few others are typing. Yeah, so how can I help my organization to achieve its goals? So not only asking the question, what are the organizational goals, but asking your leader in the conversation, what can I do to help? And for Marianne, you know, I love your response to see that change only involves our department, not others. I have adapted well. I've indicated I'm doing okay. My concern is that, you know, how are the other organizations doing? So it's a great way to respond and take the conversation deeper. Begin to understand what are some things that you can do. Love that you're going to investigate, find out, and get back to you. So our information, are our information needs changing? What metrics should I be adding? Yeah, so understanding how might I be measured against the changes that are taking place inside the organization. So all of these are good questions. They're just simply meant to be some good conversation starters, way to not only keep the conversation going between managers and leaders inside your organization, but also for yourself to begin to think through. You all indicated there's things changing in your world of work. And I see that many of you are, you know, talking about very specifically, you know, I have a longer commute. How will I adjust? Will there be a layoff? These are real questions that really get to a lot of what many of us are feeling. So conversations inside an organization during these times of transformation and change truly are critical. We get quite often just so hung up in making sure that we dot our I's and cross our T's around the vision statement. Let's make sure the vision statement is compelling. Let's make sure we roll down the goals and objectives as part of our strategic plan. But what we saw in our data at the front end, what the data tells us is that most resistance to change is people-related, and that most people truly don't understand the strategic vision, direction, organization that the organization is going. And if we don't understand, if we don't fully buy into or understand our place or our role within the change, it makes sense that resistance to change initiatives can in fact be people-related. So thank you all for sharing your responses. Love that you were willing to be transparent and do that. We're kind of closing into the end of our time together, and I wanted to leave you with a few thoughts. When it comes to conversations and when it comes to times of transformation and change inside organizations, it really is personal. And it's personal because employees want to know the truth about what's happening. And more importantly, they want to know how it will impact them and how it will impact their careers. One of the best ways to reveal that and talk about it is through conversations. Employees also want to be heard. They want to be heard around their job. They want to be heard about their work and the organization's goals and strategies. And the best way to kind of get at that quite often is not by sending out an email, not by doing an instant message at the bottom of your computer screen or sending a text. It's conversations can, in fact, drive engagement during times of transformation and change. Conversations really can be at the core of helping you as an individual and helping your managers and your organizations kind of navigate the choppy waters that can occur when you have change and transformation. Now the good news is, and this is just a quick reminder, that at Career Systems we do conversations, and we do conversations that are designed to engage, retain, develop, and challenge employees at all times, but they're most critical during times of transformation and change. So we encourage you to check that out. We have public workshops scheduled for the next 3 months, beginning in February, around all of these course titles, and if you're interested in more information, certainly we can share that with you. But now's the perfect time to not only to develop the skills of your leaders around conversations, but also develop your own personal skills around your brand, your network, and seeking out feedback. A final message I'd like to share with all of you is, as leaders and as employees, we shouldn't wait for the exit. During times of transformation and change, raw, real human conversations can be the most direct path to greater awareness and stronger relationships. So conversations ultimately can be the difference between whether or not your change initiatives succeed or fail. Now we have about 5 minutes left, and what I want to make sure I do is give an opportunity for anybody who has any questions to bring up any questions. So you have the chat box there where you can pose your questions, and I'd be happy to answer your questions. And Marianne will be sending out a recording to this event, and also be sending off a one-page handout that's a pretty good summary of today's session that you're more than willing to share with others. And thank you, Evelyn, for joining us from Belgium. So thrilled that you joined us today. So any questions? You can also hit *6, so you have to listen to someone else's voice besides mine and Lindsay's. If you have any questions, type them in. We'll give that just a second. So again, after today's call, we'll send you a follow-on. We will be sharing you the recording, absolutely. Feel free to pass the recording along, and we'll be sharing with you a one-page document that kind of represents everything we talked about today. It even gives you those conversation Kickstarter questions. Feel free to pass that along as well, because we certainly hope that some of what you've learned today, the strategies, will help your leaders, but also will help you manage some of the conversations that we have. So the question is, how do you learn about our public workshops? If you go to our Career Systems International website, www.careersystemsintl.com, and on the very top page, if you scroll down, you'll see there's an information around our workshops. You can also click on the Events tab, and it will take you directly to all of the public workshops that are being offered over the next 3 months. All right. Well, thank you so much for everyone who decided to join us today. Again, I see Leslie has a question. Thank you. We're going to have a new leader shortly. Any suggestions about what he or she should be communicating early on? You know, Leslie, that's a great question. And whenever new leaders have joined an organization, one of the things that I recommend to them is they work very quickly, almost to kind of go through a re-onboarding, a rehire process with all of their team members. So I would encourage that new leader to sit down and begin having conversations early on with every member of their team to begin to understand who they are, where they are, what they want out of the world of work. There's some great information around that in the Love 'Em or Lose 'Em book, Getting Great People to Stay. There's some great tips and tricks in there. But communicating to your leader to start early on and sitting down and having one-on-one conversations with each member of their team to kind of level set around who they are and what's important to them is a great way for them to get started. All right, so thank you so much. Thank you for all of you joining the call today. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. You see our contact information there on the screen. And again, all of you will be receiving a follow-up email from us with some additional information as well. Thank you for joining. We hope you have a great day and a great year.
Thank you so much, Beverly. On behalf of Beverly Kroll, myself, and everyone here at Career Systems International, we'd like to thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you in our future presentations.